Sometimes I'm right,
Do you see
and I
it?
can be wrong. My own beliefs are in my songs. Butcher, the baker, the drummer, and then makes no difference what group I'm in. But sometimes I'm right, and I can be wrong. My own beliefs are in my song. The butcher, the banker, the drummer, and then it makes no difference what group I'm in. 'Cause I am everyday people.
There is a blue one that can't accept the green one, for living with the fat one, trying to be a skinny one. Different strokes for different folks, and so on and so on. And Scooby Dooby 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 Doo, sha sha. We got to live together.
I am no better, and neither are you. We are the same, whatever we do. You love me, you hate me, you know me, and then still can't figure out the thing I'm in. 'Cause I am everyday people. Yeah, yeah.
There is a long hair that doesn't like the short hair, for being such a rich one that will not help the poor one. Different strokes for different folks, and so on and so on. And Scooby Dooby Doo, sha sha. We got to live together. There is a yellow one that won't accept the black one, that won't accept the red one, that won't accept the white one. Different strokes for different folks, and so on and so on. And Scooby Dooby Doo, sha sha. I am everyday people.
So I love that song. It's what's been getting me through the past couple days. And I am so grateful that you are all here tonight. And I want to make sure, are you still? I'm not seeing anybody. Now I am. Okay. It's like, where did everybody go? Um, and welcome, because we have a impactful program for you tonight. And we are going to be talking to several of the parents from the Bixby 9 in Oklahoma, in Bixby, Oklahoma, plus two of the advocates that have been helping them. Plus, we have two secret guests that have been helping them in the background that we want to make sure that they also have their voice in the room tonight. So Katie is going to start us off. And she is going to give us a big picture overview of how the Bixby 9 came together and what has been the sequence of events. So, Katie, welcome, and we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Charmaine. I appreciate this. When you said to give a brief overview of all the events, I didn't think I could do it. It's a lot. So basically, we have this wonderful Down syndrome community here in the Tulsa area. And all of us are friends, all of us are supportive of each other and supportive of our kids. And, as with any parents, we just started kind of comparing notes and realizing that things just kind of were not feeling quite right in our schools. And I guess here's a good point to say that we're from all 9 of our families were from all 4 elementary/intermediate schools here in the Bixby school district. So it's not just at one school. And we just realized that our kids weren't being meaningfully included, according to IDEA. So we went to the state for help. A few of us met with the state in April, I believe. Just kind of talked about our concerns, and they encouraged us to file a state complaint so they could investigate. So we did. And so our with the help of our wonderful advocates from the Oklahoma Parents for Student Achievement, and then with advice, of course, as you mentioned, from Include NJ and All In for Inclusive Education. So we wanted to, know what our rights were and know the right things to say and ask for. So that's where it all started. And then what has happened since May? That's kind of a big question, but I'll kind of go through a brief timeline. So we filed the complaint on May 23rd. The 9 families received the results on August 2nd, but the results had actually been sent to the district on July 21st. And then at that time, the state issued directives to the school district and deemed that the district was out of compliance based on the documentation of the procedural process for LRE, for least restrictive environment. And so then we waited because one of the directives was for the school district to meet with all of us to rediscuss each of our child's IEP and the least restrictive environment. And let's see, and then we were informed on August 29th that the district had been given an extension way back on July 24th, but we had not been told that. And so the state gave the district a extension until September 27th to meet with all of us. So all of us did meet with the schools before September 27th. But several of us didn't feel like we really were listened to or had a voice or really discussed least restrictive environment in these meetings. 2 of our families got to go forward and have another meeting. But several of us they just basically told us that that was their final decision and it wasn't up for discussion. And they said the district said all necessary considerations were addressed at that time. And at our meetings, actually, we had a lot of discussion, but our voices weren't heard. And then on September 24th, the district was given another extension to a deadline of October 30th. On October 25th, 2 State Department employees called just a few of us to get our opinion and feedback on how we felt that our district had been working with us during these directives in the state complaint. And, we gave them our honest opinions. But then on October 30th, we received final communication from the State Department that Bixby had satisfied the directives. So that brings us pretty much to where we are today with that. We, in our collective meetings, this is not just one meeting, but in just all of these different meetings, we've, since the state complaint, we've experienced more combative meetings, definitely less collaboration. We've been given added notes to our IEP drafts, alleging that our children have major behavior issues and that they're aggressive when those things weren't listed in our previous IEPs and were never discussed with us prior to the state complaint. And then additional district administration we're now at our meetings, including the assistant superintendent, the special education directors, and even the school attorney. So they have all been present at our meetings, and and we will discuss a little bit further, but I think for our next steps, we're still very hopeful to have collaborative relationships with each of our schools and our school district. Obviously, our kids are number one here. We want them to be successful and to have every opportunity. We want them to grow up to be successful, independent, wonderful contributing members to society. And we know that that starts with education, and we will not stop until we get our voices heard, because we want our children to have bright futures, just like our other typically developing children. We just want our concerns to matter, and we want to be able to create positive change. And then a couple of us have a few follow-up meetings coming up to discuss some different assessments that we had. And so then we'll just see what the next steps are after those meetings. So I hope that was a good enough overview. It's a lot of information to pack into a small presentation. Oh, you're muted, Charlie.
I know. How many times do you hear me? Can you hear
Yes.
me yet? Thank you so much, Katie. And I think that as we go along, that big picture is going to be helpful for folks. And if you do have questions in the audience, if you could put a Q in front of your question. We have our friend Barb, the Zoom wing woman, who will be looking in the chat for your questions. We'll have sometimes periodically that we'll pause and have questions, and then hopefully we'll have time at the end also. So I think if we could maybe have a couple of the other parents from Bixby speak about what were your IEP meetings like, and what kind of led up to we've got to do something different here. So
I can take some of this,
Kristen,
and I'm sure
thank you.
others
Oh,
have.
and if
Yeah.
you can also, I'm sorry, introduce yourself, and if you want to tell us something wonderful about your daughter.
Well, my name's Kristen, and my daughter is Adeline. She's 7 years old. She has Down syndrome, and she's a smart young lady. She's very perceptive of her surroundings, and then she likes to go and practice until she's confident, and then she likes to exhibit what she knows whenever she's really confident with that. But so early, like on more than a year ago, and sorry, my kids are playing in the background. The meetings were very kind. Like, people were nice. It was a nice vibe at the table. You'd come in, they were saying all these nice things. But then, I started asking questions about, the alternative assessment participation, because I had concerns about that. And as soon as I did that, it was like, oh, we need to bring in the assistant director of SPED for that. And then I started asking about more time in gen ed and being pretty firm about it, not so like, oh yeah, we'll get there one day. Oh yeah, that's the ultimate goal. But actually, well, why not right now? And whenever I did that, it was like, okay, we're bringing in the director of SPED. And then they would not, allow us to discuss coming off of that alternate assessment. But they're saying well, because they're on this alternate assessment, they have to have alternate standards, which has an alternate curriculum, which is over there, and just things like that. And so, I kept pushing, and each meeting that I pushed, it was like they leveled up one more. They're like, fine, we're bringing our attorney. So for my family, they were bringing the attorney in and their director of SPED and all these individuals prior to the state complaint being filed. And that really was kind of a precipitating event for my family. It's like, okay, we're not getting anywhere. So we do have to take next steps. We've always wanted to work collaboratively, but whenever you just are met with just resistance and opposition every step of the way, And each step, every time like we would ask anything, they're like, oh, we need to show how much she can't do. Let's do an IQ test and let's look at how, they just want to point all the negatives out and not look at like the positives and how could we support her in this environment. And then it was like, oh, we got to look at behavior. Oh, she just possibly couldn't do that, because she has these egregious behaviors. Like playing with her eyelashes. So it's heart-wrenching to hear these people that say they love your child to have such negative things to say. And it's heart-wrenching whenever they're like, oh, yes, we love them. We want what's best for them. But then all these decisions that they were making, they have shut doors of opportunity on our children since the day they entered that district. And that's what's hard. And I kind of got off topic on that, but
I know you're fine.
yeah. We hope to get to a point where we can positively move forward.
Yes, I think so. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And for you to see that change from the positive atmosphere at meetings until you started asking for what your child deserves, right? To be included. So maybe we could have one other parent talk about what their IEP meetings were like before the state complaint, and then we can get into the state complaint a little bit more. So would somebody else like to talk about their IEP meetings?
I can go if you want.
Okay.
For me, okay?
Yeah.
So we have from the beginning of Layton's been in his elementary for 4 years. He started in kindergarten. And we've always put a lot of trust in Layton's IEP team to guide his education, believing that they were the experts who would do what was best for him. And we always had really good relationships with everyone, it felt like. But for 4 years, we've asked in every single meeting, and we've even begged really for the smallest increase in Layton's academic time in general education. Every time that request has been denied, not even 5 minutes has been added to his general education. And so this last year, when we walked out of Layton's IEP meeting, we realized that the two main concerns we really wanted to address at that meeting had completely been dismissed and marginalized. That was next year's placement and LRE. We were essentially told not to worry about tomorrow, to focus on the small accomplishments. It was disheartening and honestly painful, especially when Layton's general education teacher had shared how well he was doing in her class. And she even mentioned that he thrives on routine and mirrors his peers' behavior, which is something we've always talked about, how Layton, that's how he learns, is mimicking his peers. He loves to observe his friends and then he will try. And so when I pointed out that this was a clear reason to increase his time in her classroom, her response I got was immediately, well, we don't want to push him too fast. And I was like, too fast? My goodness, we're going into his third grade year, and like we're almost out of, that's third grade is the end of our elementary here. Then we go to intermediate after that. Yeah, so it was really frustrating and disempowering to have Layton's team focus on caution over meaningful inclusion, as if his future doesn't depend on the choices we make today. It feels like our goals for Layton are seen as unrealistic and unimportant. We don't want to just celebrate the small things because we do that already. We've been doing that since he was born. So that's hard for a parent with special needs to hear that anyway, because it's like, man, do we ever celebrate the small things? That we have big goals and plans for our son as well. And so we wanted to set a path that will give him options for independence. A few weeks after that last IEP meeting, our local Down Syndrome Association of Tulsa group hosted the National Down Syndrome Education Conference here in Tulsa. And learning about how general education and special education should collaborate and seeing the strong research supporting inclusion was incredibly validating. It confirmed that our concerns and requests for more inclusion for Layton were not only reasonable, but well supported by evidence and best practices for children with Down syndrome. Shortly after that, I had a parent-teacher conference with Layton's special education teacher, joined by several key IEP team members. I was eager to talk openly outside the pressure of the IEP team meeting because that can get intense in there. But as we spoke, it became clear that my understanding of IDA's guidelines for least restrictive environment differed greatly from theirs, and they seemed largely unaware of the research on inclusion and best practices for children like Layton. When I asked who was responsible for managing Layton's general education minutes, because it feels like someone's like the holder of the minutes, they don't want to let them go. But every time I was met with, most team members would dismiss it and say, oh, well, that's above my pay grade. And one district administrator repeatedly told me if I disagreed, I should take it to the state. So a few of us arranged the meeting at the State Department of Special Education, and we drove to Oklahoma and met with them and addressed our concerns with them directly. And the intent wasn't to go there to file a state complaint at all. We kind of wanted validation, being like, we're speaking two different languages at the IEP table, so we can't communicate effectively at all when we're speaking. It's like we're not even on the same page at all. So we needed some clear, we need you to tell us what LRE is and explain it to Bixby so that we can move forward and actually communicate. And then.
So thank you. And I didn't give you a chance to introduce yourself and tell us something about your son that you love.
Okay, my son is Layton Haley. My name is Carmen Haley. I'm his mama. And he is 9 years old and has Down syndrome. And he is just a fun, amazing little boy. He's super smart. He's really funny and he has great rhythm. He's a wonderful dancer and just loves to learn through music.
See, isn't that wonderful? Thank you. Thank you. And I hope all of that is written in his IEP.
Some of it is. Yeah.
Okay, good. We like that. Yeah, because our kids are human, right? And the other thing is I just thought of, do you have facilitated IEPs do you have like a facilitator that can come in and do a facilitated meeting?
So after we had our first meetings in September after the state complaint, when those did not go well because, basically they started out with like all the behavior list of our kids, and that's how they were it seemed to be presented to us. This is why your kids don't belong in gen ed. And so obviously those meetings did not go well. And that's when the district filed a second extension. And with that extension, the district actually requested that we have a facilitated meeting after. So those meetings, the second meetings, well, actually only two of us got second meetings. So isn't that correct? I believe. So the two of us that did get second meetings, those meetings were facilitated.
Good. Well, and I think that's an option. And I think it always depends on the qualities of the facilitator. But I have seen that really help a lot of parents and get their voice, and it kind of like evens out the power in the room, so thank you for that. So I don't know who would like to talk about how I think it was 5 parents, weren't there, that were involved with the systemic complaint. So does somebody want to speak to how it was decided? Okay, it's time really, we need to look at doing a complaint with the state.
So 9 of us filed the systemic
okay.
with the state,
Okay.
and then the state did remove 3 of those individuals. They were students that were like already in intermediate school, but beyond that, I don't really know why those individuals were removed, since they were experiencing the same challenges we were within the same district. But so that came about from those of us that went to Oklahoma City and met with the State Department. They asked us not to individually file.
Oh, really?
That's why we came in and did it as a joint
complaint. And so who was helping you guys file or write the state complaint, right?
Lucia was. So at the point of this, she was helping a couple of us. And so she had seen firsthand how these meetings were going or not going, what was or wasn't being done. And so she had some knowledge of like what we were experiencing and that it was a real problem.
Right. So Lucia, do you want to to introduce yourself, tell us, where you work and something that makes you smile when you think of your child.
Yes, thank you. My name is Lucia Froling. I am a non-attorney special education advocate. I'm a mom of three, two of whom have dyslexia and dysgraphia, and one of whom also has epilepsy. So I have the privilege and honor of walking alongside families all throughout the state to empower them, really. They are really the ones that know their children best and know what they want. And I try to come in and be collaborative and help the parents' voices be heard, because really they should be the one directing their child's education. And after going to a few meetings, I realized, because of Kristen's work of connecting some of the families together, that it was beyond just a couple of families. It seemed to be more of a systemic issue. And so we thought the best thing to do would be to talk to our State Department of Education and get guidance of what we should do, because we wanted to be helpful and a resource. And sometimes it needs to be more than just the parent or the advocate at the table. And so, as Kristen shared, they directed us to file the group state complaint. So I am the one that signed it and filed it. We purposely did it when school got out, because our hope was that the 60-day investigation process would be complete. And then we could have the meetings before school started, and the kids would be set up to just start the school year off, when we'd have these wonderful least restrictive environment discussions. And we would talk about, let's start with what least restrictive environment is, because there's only one, and that is a general education setting. And let's start the conversation there. And where do the kids need extra support? Because I'm very much sunshine rainbows. Like, this is what's going to happen. That's not what happened. I think sometimes people don't know what they don't know. So I am still really hopeful that positive change can be made. Include and Jay and All In for Inclusive Education have offered free support. I've heard that the district has reached out to other organizations. We're not sure who, to work on inclusive practices. I hope that that does happen. But for these 9 families, there's a lot of room for improvement and a lot of work to be done. And so some of these parents have been so brave. They have spoken at school board meetings. They have shared data. I shared data that's publicly available. Only 52% of the students in the district are in the students with disabilities in the district are in the general education environment 80% or more of their day.
Oh,
So that means 48% are not.
right.
And
And it probably means kids with intellectual disabilities are probably around 12%, right? I mean, the national average, I think, is 17 for kids with intellectual disabilities, as far as being included for at least 80%. So, yeah, I mean, and then you look at, yes, on paper they're included, but what does it really look like when they're in the classroom?
exactly. And I'm hopeful we did, because I'm more about being positive and how can we create change? Because if it's happening in one district, then it's probably happening in more than one, as the chat has showed. So we did a study. We worked with the legislator on an inclusion study. So my coworker here shared
Oh, good.
her story about how her child is meaningfully included. We had a parent that shared their story about how their child is not so much. And we also had members from the Council of Parent Attorneys and Advocates share what IDEA says, because again, I'm not an attorney. And then the New Jersey and Maryland Coalitions of Inclusive Education shared about inclusive practices in the research and what can happen in their experience. And then our Secretary of Education, Nellie Sanders, also shared about her vision of just, we shouldn't even have to have these conversations. It's been almost 50 years since IDEA was first authorized. We shouldn't have to have these conversations. And how can we possibly expect competitive integrated employment for our students when they're segregated in a K-12 setting? So really all the accolades and bravery is for the parents. They're amazing. I just get the honor to walk alongside them.
Well, thank you for your work because, yeah, I mean, look at the coalition of people that you have brought together, which I always, that one tip I share with parents is that we need to widen our circle of allies. Um, and that also means, parents of kids without disabilities because their kids benefit from inclusion too. So yes, we have so much to do. Barb, let's pause. Do you have some questions or comments that would fit here, or are we gonna, where do you
Well,
see?
so great questions have been asked along the way and answered along the
Oh,
way.
cool.
So that's been great. There are just a couple, I'm just going to zoom back. A while ago, it was asked what was the least restrictive environment for the children. So you may have already answered that kind of along the way.
Yes, we're in COPA seat 2, and we just heard the mantra the other day, right? That the only least restrictive environment is the general education classroom.
Exactly, yeah. And then, does the district share the knowledge that alternative assessment means the removal of a diploma track?
Yeah, and that can be state dependent, right? And it's, yeah, as far as alternate standards and such. There's a really good, and I'm making a list, article from the TIE Center. And I'll email everybody that registered for tonight and give you some additional resources. And I know Candace Cortelia had registered. I don't know if she's live with us tonight, but she's from the Advocacy Institute in Virginia, and they have a great part on their website all about state complaints. So that would be another resource for families looking at exploring that. So, all right. Well, the other thing I know, I saw one question about what was the goal of the study and what are your legislative plans? So I don't know if there's somebody else that can speak to that.
Kristen, do you want to take it or I can? Okay, so the study was about inclusive education and the power of parental participation. So the first goal was really to bring awareness because about the benefits of inclusion and how it is beneficial to all students because we have an inclusive society. And the second part was talking about bringing awareness that there's only 17 states in the United States that are considered consent states. The rest of us are non-consent states, which means the parents only have the power to consent to evaluations of their child and the initial provision of services. Anything after that, you can disagree and the school can still implement it. Now, the hope it would be a consensus, but really it's up to the school team. And the parents have their procedural safeguards, which in Oklahoma, we do have facilitation, we have mediation, we have state complaints, and we have due process. And for due process in Oklahoma, a parent can represent themselves pro se, or they have to hire an attorney. And unfortunately, in Oklahoma, we have about 5 or 6 special education attorneys, and 2 of them work for the school district law firms that represent most of the school districts in Oklahoma. So that's a pretty difficult process for parents. And it's pretty scary. I mean, that's a big thing to do. And the goal is always to prevent that. And the thought was for most of us, we've had alternate diploma for just a couple of years now in Oklahoma. And the thought that putting someone on OAP, the alternate diploma, that's made within the IEP team, and that's a team decision. And I have a typical developing son, and I got to choose if he was the honors track or the regular track diploma. There's no reason why parents who have students with disabilities should not be afforded that same right for their child. And that should not be decided, in my opinion, at the age of 3. That should be a conversation that should be had in high school.
Right. So do you see any legislation coming from this, or, I mean,
think
is that like one of the things that you guys are going to pursue?
I think it's definitely a conversation worth having this session or next session. With the recent election and the change up, I don't know what that looks like. So we're not sure what that will look like going forward, but I think in any way that we can make sure that parents really have an equal voice in their child's education is important.
Right, right,
We want to raise awareness for that
right.
and to do it in a collaborative way.
I know. That's our goal, right? Yes. So if we look at, we're up to, filed the state complaint. So I don't know if there's another parent that can talk about what the corrective action plan was that the State Department issued. Like, what was the district supposed to do? Were they found out of compliance?
I think I can do that if I have it in front of me. The district was issued 3 directives from the State Department of Education. That's what you wanted to know, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
so they were found out of compliance with LRE.
Yeah, so the district was found out of compliance based on the documentation of the procedural process for LRE. They were to meet with us within the first 2 weeks of the school year, which was the original directive, of each student named in the complaint, and must reconsider the student's least restrictive environment. And they were supposed to generate, review, or revise as necessary policies, practices, and procedures regarding the LRE for a student with disabilities. And they were to create and submit to the Oklahoma State Department a professional development plan for district special education staff regarding the updated policies, procedures, and practices. So those were the 3 directives. Do you want to add something, Lucia?
So I do want to add on kind of like how those
Yes.
directives were cured. Because that is an ongoing systemic issue that we're going to face. So whenever they did meet with us to cure the directive of like rediscussing LRE, it was really the spirit of the school was like, we're not going to make any changes that are substantial on this IEP. We are only here to discuss LRE and that part. And it came from a place of like not looking at how can we support this child? What are the best practices? Because there's lots of research on how to do this. There's lots and lots of research. And so instead of like coming out from that direction, it was we're gonna just defend the decision that's been made and make sure we have the documentation. Even though the directive was like, well, it was the Code of Federal Regulations 300.116 that was found to be out of compliance with. So, that encompasses all these other parts to it. And then like on the directive where they had to review their policies and procedures, the first revision of that they submitted to the state as part of like being cured, it wasn't even in alignment with the law. It was in direct contradiction to that part of the law. But they went ahead and submitted it because they were like, well, we have this deadline, even though they had an extension on that. And then whenever it came to the training and stuff, we did an open records request for that training. And the training was just about how to defend that decision. Again, there was no training on what are best practices. How can we support these students? Whenever we see a barrier, how can we address it instead of just going, oh, barrier over there, segregate over there. So it just shows the perception. And I mean, we just have this ongoing, challenge that we're going to have to continue to address. And we're not going to stop until we get there because our kids want it.
I know. And that's the thing, earlier when people were talking about, 4 years we've been coming to the, table asking for this. And, I just don't know if I mean, I was a teacher, and I know, Kristen, you're a teacher. Um, if teachers understand and realize every day counts, every day counts. And so, yeah, it is really heartbreaking when you see your young kids and you know that their opportunities are being limited because they don't have the ability to be a full-time member, or at least 80% of the time, right, of their general ed classes. So, yeah, that is. So then part of it, right, was that they had to go back and have additional IEP meetings. And so that's what you were talking about. And they were saying, no, we're only going to talk about LRE. And then, so now, was that like the end of October? I think was the second deadline for them. So now, what are people looking at as far as next steps?
So at this point, I mean, we are having to explore all options, both at the local level and beyond. But none of us had good outcomes from these meetings. There were a couple token gestures of like, oh, we found 30 minutes. Yet they found it in a meeting they had before our meeting, and it wasn't even like a discussion of anything bigger than that. And there were only two of us that even got those token gestures.
Hmm.
But no, we are at the point where we are having to explore all options.
Right.
So, because under IDEA, there are several options, and there's OCR, and there's things that we can do.
I know. And I was thinking people maybe need to do Office for Civil Rights complaints before the Office for Civil Rights is not here, is my doom and gloom. So maybe this would be a good time. Kristen, do you want to introduce Fred and Monica? Because you guys have had some wonderful support in the background, and I want other people to know. And we'll give a quick, just before you do that, Michael McSheehan is here, our friend from New Hampshire. So Michael, welcome, welcome, welcome. And let's answer his question or have it for discussion, and then can you introduce Fred and Monica? So Michael says, do they do a systematic assessment / evaluation of where supplemental aids and services could possibly facilitate participation in general ed, academic and non-academic? And we're just getting the shaking of no. It's a foreign concept here in Bixby. You got to bring your New Hampshire ideas down here.
Yes, I will say that they talked about and added supplementary aids and services for individual IEPs, but it really wasn't thought about in that way of how do we use them in the general education setting. It was more like just generalized regardless of setting, because I don't think there's a full understanding of what inclusion means and what meaningful
Right.
inclusion means, what least restrictive environment is, and what it can look like. So my hope is always that hearts and minds will be opened to change.
Yeah, I think having that consensus in this, same definition, otherwise you just keep talking different, there's no really worth, helpful conversation. So yeah, Michael says it's not about inclusion, it's the law.
And
I
do want to give a shout out to Michael McShahan, because we used Evolve and Effect and gave copies of potential harmful effects and asked for that to be included in the potential harmful effects and the benefits. They were not utilized.
Someone at my table said they disagree.
Yes.
The research.
So we gave them copies, and they, because again, it's not as collaborative as we would hope. The potential harmful effects would be those were not used. It was, well, less time in gen ed. Well, not what we had said, and they did not use any of the benefits either. So we read them, but they did not utilize them.
Huh.
It's unfortunate.
Yes, yes. Kristen, do you want to introduce our secret guest?
Yes. So with us today, we have Fred from All In for Inclusive Education. It's a technical support. And they are in New Jersey, but they are branching out to other parts of the US. And I actually got to attend one of their conferences. It was so good. I go to tons of conferences. I love this stuff. I kind of like nerd out on research and stuff. But it was just so good because it was like talking about like what does the law say? What are the best practices? How could you do this? You get to like find just different ideas and strategies. And it was just really cool to see just like other educators there, and like they were excited about it, which was really refreshing because that's not been our experience. And like understanding that inclusion is not just lunch and recess and specials, it is so much more. There's the academic inclusion too. And then we also have Monica here, and Monica has, I don't know if you want to say the pleasure of attending all of our meetings with us, because I don't know, it's always been pleasurable. But she is with Include NJ, and she's a former special education director. So, like, just her knowledge and background has been, I can't even like begin to like thank her for how much she has brought to the table. Because, like, we knew we were out of our depth going into this. We had not encountered these fights before. And so we needed expertise and knowledge and a network of people to rely on to help us navigate these challenging times. So, because we're parents, we just want to be parents.
Yes.
And so rely on the people that have that expertise. So we've been so grateful. And yeah.
So Fred and Monica, can you unmute and introduce yourselves?
Sure. My name's Fred. I run All In for Inclusive Ed and NJCIE, which is the New Jersey branch. And before I say anything else, if Michael McSheehan is in the room anywhere, he should be recognized.
Yes.
Amazing contributions to the field. So we're a technical service provider. We provide statewide support in New Jersey through a grant through the Department of Education. And there are a number of states who have different technical support centers like ours. California did it through legislative action. Florida did as well. Maryland Coalition is through their Department of Ed. And we've been in communication with folks in Oklahoma for a while, Kristen among others. And really, we're coming to the realization that a statewide technical assistance center really would be beneficial, especially given the large number of alternate track or emergency certified teachers you have in the state at this point. So part of our conversation at that interim study was talking to legislators about possibly creating a technical assistance center around inclusive education and new teacher support in Oklahoma. That way, like in New Jersey, districts can get free help and free support for teachers across the state. Then I learned a bit more about the situation with the Bixby parents. And I was actually on a Zoom call the day that the state decision came down. And part of it was that, the parents would all get new IEP meetings for their kids. But what the parents were saying had been happening and some of the decisions that had been made were kind of shocking. And I'm from Jersey, which is the least inclusive state in the country. So for me to be shocked by some of these things, because I'm like, that's an ADA violation, this is an IDA violation, that's a code violation. What is going on here? And we're not parent advocates. But we have our secret weapon, which is Include NJ, which is Kat Kelly and Monica Ahern. Include NJ their advocates are all retired directors of special ed. That's the only people they hire because it's tough to get included in New Jersey. So I made the connection between this group and Monica. And before I say anything else, Lucia is like the Aaron Brockovich of this story. She is like, I mean, the shepherd, the guide, the connector. I am just totally impressed with what she's been doing in all of this. So I didn't want to tune off without saying that. But I will turn it over to Monica to talk about her impressions about all she's been seeing.
Thank you, Fred.
Hi, everyone. My name is Monica Ahern, and like Fred said, I'm an advocate with Include NJ, former Director of Special Services. And I have had the pleasure, and even though it's been tough, it has been an absolute pleasure working with these families and working with Lucia and Christy. Lucia has been tireless in this effort, and Fred is absolutely right. She has been herding cats and just keeping us all on track, and her and Christy just keeping everybody's documents in order and just getting us all together and just helping me to remember the time difference between Oklahoma and New Jersey has been a task, but they've done it for me, so I appreciate it. But it has been an amazing journey with these parents, and I just can't tell you how hard they've been fighting. And it's incredible to go into these meetings and what we consider to be just basic law. Like Michael said, it's not inclusion, it's the law, is so shocking. And then I think even more is just the basic human decency that these are children we're talking about. And the comments and some of the things that are coming out of educators' mouths are equally as shocking. So I think that we are probably in for a long, hard fight, but we're all up for it. And the kids are going to win in this because that's the goal, for the kids to win, and they will be part of their community. As long as we still have breath, that we will fight for them. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And go ahead and put your contact information in the chat. And Barb, can you make sure that we save the chat? So because we have so many wonderful people here sharing resources, I want to make sure we get that. We have a few minutes left, so let's open it up for more questions or comments. Barb, have you seen any?
And Monica, could you answer the question about what's the difference between inclusion and LRE? I think you would do a great job at answering that one for one of the individuals that asked it in the chat.
Sure. So when we use that term LRE, that's stands for the least restrictive environment. And I think what we've all have said is that the only least restrictive environment, or LRE, equals the general education classroom. And then when we talk about inclusion, that's kind of a word I'd like to say that we kind of made up, saying how we include students in the general education classroom. But honestly, if we were providing LRE, when I was a director years ago, I used to say, I don't even want to hear the word inclusion, right? Because if we were providing LRE, we wouldn't need to use the word inclusion, because students just would be in their general ed classroom getting the services that they need, and everyone would be getting those services. And one of the people who I follow and who I think is amazing, Dr. Shelley Moore, she always says, just give everybody what they need. They get rid of IEPs, get rid of, right? Just give everybody what they need. Now, I know that's very radical. We don't want to get there yet, but you know, the idea of inclusion means that we're taking special needs students and including them in the general education setting, where LRE is the student's least restrictive environment where they can access the curriculum or education. But we really all truly believe that the least restrictive environment is general education, and students can access that curriculum there. I hope that answers the question and I didn't make it more blurry.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, yes. And that's where, you know, that common definition needs to come in, because inclusion, you ask 10 people, you'll get 10 different answers. And so that IEP team, needs to somehow come to a consensus around that too. That would be helpful. So let me see if I can see some questions here. Jennifer says, so have you parents signed off as agree on your IEPs? And we talked a little bit about this, right, for consent, or signed as disagree. They don't have that choice in Oklahoma. Did you sign but make comments? What happens if you don't sign off by the deadline of the IEP? I'm facing similar pushback of asking for more general ed time and currently working on IEP now with our deadline being next Thursday and just kind of feeling like I don't know what we should do. So who do you
I
want
say,
to?
and I know Jennifer's in the Tulsa area, so we know some amazing advocates that might be able to also give you some advice. But so we did sign disagree, but like in my last meeting, the district administrator was like, "You need to hear me. You can disagree with this, but it changes nothing." So even though I disagree, the school still went forward with what they proposed because we, don't have a right beyond that. And then you follow up with parent comment as to what you disagree about. So
Yeah, and I think, in Idaho, it's really similar. We have a process where you can have, 10 days to disagree and try to resolve it. But yeah, in the end, the district's the one that has the obligation to provide the education. So if there's not consensus, a lot of times it's just the district gets to make a final decision. And then parents have to take action like they have done in Bixby. And now, also looking at what other actions can be taken because it's still not resolved, right? So I don't know do you guys see another question?
Well, there's a question, is there a study for the harmful effects you mentioned? Would love to share that with our team. Oh, that was answered. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
That was answered. Does Oklahoma get more funding for a student in a self-contained placement?
I can speak on that. So Oklahoma, we use a weighted formula. So it's not based on the setting. It is based on their disability. So in Oklahoma, you can have up to 2 disabilities that are counted for your weight. So we have our, as part of the funding formula, this base state amount, and then you have the multipliers where you add, there's other multipliers, but just to give a basic of their grade level as well as their disability categories. So when you add those together, then that's the weight. So educational placement doesn't have any bearing on the weight. We do have, which I think every someone correct me if I'm wrong. There also is access to tier 2 funding for the more high needs students that are 3 times over what funding they receive, and it has to be for 2 years, and they can apply for those fundings through our State Department of Education.
Okay.
And since Michael McShahan is on here, maybe he wants to share more about the research.
I know, Michael McSheehan and Evolve and Effect. I have to make sure I get the E's right. So Michael, do you want to unmute? Because Michael has some wonderful research and has, explained it in a way that can be helpful for both educators and families. So Michael, can you unmute? Are you still here?
I have unmuted. It's bedtime here in New Hampshire, so I'm not going to turn on my video because
Okay.
I'm not
Because
camera ready.
I know, and you got to be up for the sunset or sunrise pictures, right?
I know. I like to get up early. So I've uploaded, at first I put in the link, but I just uploaded the full PDF of the harmful effects research and
good.
summary. So you can all just download that directly instead of having to give me all of your contact information.
Cool.
If you go to the website, there are related resources that also talk about the research in relationship to benefits of general education. And what I've done is in both of those documents, the harmful effects and the benefits of time in general ed, I've pulled what I consider to be the most powerful and most recent research.
Right.
There's lots of kind of individual student qualitative studies, which are great and they give us a nice starting point. But I've tried to pull in what are called kind of syntheses of research. So looking across multiple studies, so that we're not considering these as just one-offs. That worked for that one kid in that one school in that one state. And instead, rather pulling in larger studies that look across multiple states at a time, for example. And if anybody doesn't understand the research, wants to understand more of it, I'm happy to geek out with you anytime and chat through it. There should be an online course, should be available already, if not soon, on my courses site that kind of explains all the different studies that are cited in both of those handouts. And then I've tried to make available on the website kind of 1-page, 2-page briefs so that you don't have to read through a 20-page research study. We give you kind of the punchlines of it. Of course, now with AI, we can all just upload a study and get a 4th grade reading summaries. Am I answering your question, Charmaine? It's late at night here.
Yes, you're doing great. Thank you. And I appreciate that because, like I said, we have so many people that have wonderful resources, and that's part of collective advocacy, is that we learn and work, with and from each other. So I so appreciate everyone carving out time for their evening and spending it with us this evening. I would like everybody here, if you could type in a word or two that would be like, this sums up my aha moments that I've had here tonight, or some other word or phrase that you would like to add, if you want to thank our speakers. So I know Monica was talking about Shelley Moore. I thought, have you ever seen Shelley Moore? She does that like waterfall of gratitude in the chat. So I do hope, I love it. We are not alone, inspired, proof that we're better together. Keep them coming. Collective wisdom. Yes, I love it. I have a video that's 3 minutes and 18 seconds long, and I shared it at the beginning, and we've had a lot of people join us. So as you are giving us some words of wisdom in the chat, I'm going to play our ending video, and I hope that all of you enjoy it. So let me get it keyed up here again. Get back to the beginning and share.
Sometimes I'm right and I can be wrong. My own beliefs are in my songs. Butcher, the baker, the drummer, and then makes no difference what group I'm in.
But sometimes I'm right and I can be wrong. My own beliefs are in my song. The butcher, the banker, the drummer, and then it makes no difference what group I'm in. 'Cause I am everyday people.
There is a blue one who can't accept the green one, for living with the fat one, trying to be a skinny one. Different strokes for different folks, and so on and so on and Scooby
I love it. So on that musical note of inspiration, let us know that you are in for the long ride here, because advocacy is a long journey. My son is 36 years old, and I am still helping him self-advocate. So it's a long journey for parents, and it's the most worthwhile journey that you'll be on. So thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in your children. And we are going to make positive change, because if it happened in Woodland Park, Colorado in 1990, it can happen in Bixby. It can happen in New Jersey. So thank you for being here. I'll be in touch and send you the resources that were shared. And I'm just thrilled that we have so many people working together. So thank you so much.